This brings us to the second panel discussion on hybrid cloud management, overcoming app modernization and data integration challenges. Now, I'd like to introduce our eminent panel members, starting with our respected moderator, Mr. Malick DIOP, CIO, Groupe ATPS, Mr. Kamran Ahmed, Vice President Data Quality Manager, the Saudi National Bank, Mr. Oluwaseun Morafa, Director of IT and Innovation, Green Africa. Over to you, Mr. Malick, to moderate this wonderful panel.
Thank you very much, Bridget, for inviting in this event. I'm Malick DIOP, I'm CEO of ATPS, a subsidiary of Banque Centrale Populaire of Morocco. We are based in Senegal, in some other country. It's an honor and pleasure to participate in this event and to moderate this panel. I will present my distinguished panel, Mr. Oluwaseun, General Manager, Executive Head of Business Data Insight, mentioned. Thank you for joining us. Mr. Kamran Ahmed, Vice President of Data Quality Manager in Saudi National Bank. And finally, Mr. Oluwaseun Morafa, Director of IT Innovation in Africa. Before I ask some questions to the distinguished panelists, I would like to share just some point, my point of view on this topic with panel. It's a very big subject. Maybe I can say some word on it. More and more we can see cloud giants invest in future innovation, like AI, as said in the previous panel, IoT also, machine learning and cloud, more than $20 billion in this domain. Leader invest with a clear vision of the market and develop competencies to maintain their leadership, such as AWS, Microsoft, or Google, and IBM also. Hyperscaler have been heavily invested in data center, particularly over the past months. So, as you see, cloud is an amazing business, actually. In our subject, I think we can talk about also cloud native, because to modernize your app, maybe sometimes you need to go to this phase. But what is cloud native? If you are a developer, maybe you can remember our old monolithic application we have developed maybe in the 19th. Then we have move on virtualized version with hypervisor enable multiple monolithic application run on the same x86 server, and we move on cloud ready version. And finally, as you see, we have nowadays cloud native application deploying as microservices within container managed by Centrale's orchestration function. So where we can deploy our cloud application, some company have local private cloud, also use public cloud, and in the middle you can have the hybrid cloud. So it's a mix between local private cloud with OpenStack, VMware, and so on, and public cloud with AWS, Microsoft or IBM Cloud. And as you see it, there's some trigger which make this business take decision to go to the cloud. Maybe we can have the agility and services we can found only in cloud offering. That are the most key trigger for platform adoption. Business demanding more agility and speed from IT. Functionality or service are only found on cloud offering. There are sometimes you can find only on services. Data center requires upgrade, expansion, or replacement. So maybe we need some resilience in our system, and IT operation budget are more reduced by business, and so as you see, there's a lot of trigger which make us take the decision to go to the cloud. And beside those triggers, we have some drivers like digital transformation, innovation, or scalability, resilience, and so on. But also we have a lot of inhibitor to cloud adoption, like data privacy, security concern, vendor lock-in concern, and financing and governance model. But this trend is decreasing with business requirement. But it's very interesting for me to discuss about this, but to not take a lot of time. I will ask some question to our distinguished panel. I first ask to Mr. Kamran. Along the same line, how do you do data integration when you are trying to modernize your application in a hybrid cloud context? I think, Kamran, your mic is.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you, Malick, for the opportunity. Basically, the data integration and interoperability is a combined subject, and it's a very, you can say, the very rooted subject to be successful in IT solution or the business solution or data integration or master data management. When we talk about the data integration, it's basically we have to see the perspective, which perspective we are looking. For example, if we are looking only in terms of the enterprise level, or we are looking for the external data as well, or we are looking for the global level. So let's take and think like that. Okay, why we are doing the data integration. The data integration basically giving a background to consolidate data, to define the common terms and reuse them. And we look for the application integrations, because right now these days the application integration, data integrations, entities integrations are happening. For example, right now the government looking the data. For example, if I'm going right now in Saudi Arabia to renew my license, so they look the ID card credentials as well. They are looking for, they have every single information, which house I'm living, because this is a housing database. So integration is basically the very critical part for those things, and we can achieve only when we are having basically the cloud-based solutions. Either it's a private or public, but it has to be a cloud-based solution, and then we can go for the integration and interoperability of the data. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Kamran. As you say, it's a very critical part, but many companies are taking the leap to the cloud or even in the cloud, although maybe hesitating because of business or privacy risk. Based on your extensive expertise in legacy application migration, how does a legacy application take advantage of multi-cloud or simple cloud services?
See, for the legacy applications to go into the cloud, it's basically a challenge. It's a multi-platform challenge. For example, the application before going into the legacy application into the cloud, we need to understand to split the application. We need the source code. We need to basically some of the overhaul the coding if it is required. So the architecture of the legacy application is very much required. And once this has happened, and then we have to deal with basically the quality assurance and system and availability. No doubt the cloud is basically giving us a lot of scalability, but on the other hand side, it's also increasing the risk of information security. So are we taking the correct measures to protect our legacy applications? Another thing is the data migration, which is basically the biggest thing. Data migration and integration is not that easy in the legacy application if the source codes are not available. So what it happened actually, for example, in one case, we assume that we do not have the source code available. So we have to move as a container and we have to execute that. So it means we are going to use the cloud options, but we are not able to utilize the proper cloud features. In second situation, if we have the coding available, so we have to look at to the budget perspective. Are we ready to overhaul this application because the application is going to be cost? Another thing is we have to understand the people, the business as usual interruptions, because people are not trained. So at that point in time, I normally say the challenge is to create the literacy amongst the people to if the interface is changed, and plus our feature is going to be changed. The business as usual are going to be the change. So the literacy level should be high. The skill level should be high. Another thing is basically the integration portion when the legacy systems are going up. What exactly we are looking for. Whenever I'm presenting any topic, so my first point is what is basically the objective, what we are trying to achieve. Number one, are we achieving the scalability, accessibility, or we're trying to reduce the cost? So based on that priority, if we achieve that one, normally what happens, the people are very fascinated by the technology and they just hire the vendor. And two things happen at that point in time, because they learn their learning is very heavy in terms of cost, because they consume a lot of cost. Results is nothing because they are not planning and not literate properly. That creates a lots of issue in technology-based projects. So these are the few challenges. Basically, whenever the organization thinking to scalable and move to the cloud. Malick, over to you.
Thanks a lot. As I see, there is a lot of risk going alone in the cloud. Maybe you can explain to us what are the steps to follow to migrate to the cloud the most safely you can.
See, if any applications wants to move on the cloud, so first they have to understand their objective. Number one, they have to completely re-architecture their application, understand the source codes are available. They have to define the strategy how to migrate the data. They have to design a complete security architecture, what and how they are going to use and which environment they are going to use. And they need basically the complete upper hand, or you can say the supervision from the big people. If IT department alone is thinking to migrate to the to the cloud, but the CEO is not thinking like that, and he has nobody sell him the benefit, it will never be sale, because it will waste of energy and time and everything, and at the end of the day we are losing everything. So it means the sponsorship is critical. Another thing is we have to increase the technology upgrades in terms of literacy. Tools comes after that, but before that, amongst the IT department and plus the consumers who are going to use the application, we have to increase their literacy. If I talk about, for example, 20 years back, when the people are talking, when they were, let's say 25, yeah. People when we were working on the financials application, and at that point in time, many of the applications were not automated. So when they think, okay, it's going to be automated, so it's a passive resistance we receive from the people side, because the fear of loss of job is always there. If everything is automated, so we have to address the passive resistance along the side. In my experience, since I'm working in 1995 in IT application development, modernization of applications, I never seen the jobs are less. The only thing is the skill set is different is required. Let me elaborate further to just address the passive resistance. For example, people may be obsolete for the current existing skill set, which is true, but the new skill set is required in high demand and with a much higher volume and much higher pay. Let's say, take an example of recent days, the RPAs basically is coming into the market, and lots of people are adopting, but it's a very slow pace. Why? Because many people think, okay, if the RPA is in taking place of what we're supposed to do. This is not the question basically. Yes, skill set is going to be a different. For example, automatic car, RPA is the example of that one, automatic car. So you have to do the different skill set because the backend is very huge. Backend, lots of people have to do many things. So come back to the integration area and the cloud integration and the migration. It requires lots of planning, sponsorship, passive resistance we have to address in hand. Plus, we have to literate all the IT staff and the consumer who are basically going to operate the application. These are the major points which basically we have to consider before migrating to the application into the cloud. Over to you, Malick.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Kamran. It's a very interesting point of view. Let's ask to Mr. Vikosi Sambu one question. You are hearing a lot about cloud everywhere.
Malick, I'm so sorry to interrupt. Mr. Voloski will not be able to make it. He's stuck in a business meeting. So I request you to please move on to the next panelist. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. So just ask to Mr. Seou, what kind of organization is needed to support application modernization and data integration, as you see?
Hi, hi Malick. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Kamran, for that very insightful expose. When you talk about, I think Kamran mentioned, he alluded to it already when he was talking. It is one thing to want to modernize an application or migrate to the cloud. It's another thing to have the willpower, another thing to have the expertise in-house to actually carry this out. So for an organization to be successful, to modernize applications, integrate the data, and then migrate to the cloud and utilize a hybrid, there's certain tools and processes and culture that have to be in place for them to get the maximum value. I will call them maybe critical success factors, things like the type of architecture, the type of tools that are used. And then you talk about principles in terms of Agile principles, DevOps principles. Mr. Kamran mentioned about the microservices architecture, which is usually the go-to architecture for unbundling services so that you can migrate them piece by piece into the cloud. So that's one thing that an organization has to take on board, is that expertise in-house. Do they need to bridge that knowledge gap? Another thing you want to focus on when you're talking about cloud native applications is, do you want to utilize containerization or just IaaS or PaaS as it is? So those are some of the things that you need to look at. These are skill sets that are not readily available, that people need to upskill on. Then we move on to this type of tools that will be used as well. For example, are they going to be using cloud orchestration tools, container orchestration tools, again, in terms of skill sets? Now, in terms of principles, there has to be established agile principles, which is basically, of course, talking about rapid development, rapid testing, end-to-end software development, And then, of course, I mentioned about containerization, which is abstracting the application from the infrastructure so that the developers can focus on development, and then IT operations can focus on deployment and managing the infrastructure. So to be successful, a company has to take a step back. It is a transformation journey. They need to make sure they have the right skill sets in place, they have the right culture. You can't think of deploying applications in the cloud the same way you think on premise. I think one of the speakers alluded to that as well. One of the biggest pain points, particularly when it comes to enterprises, is the adoption of open source tools. Open source tools will probably give you the best best ROI if you really want to take advantage of cloud cost savings. But there's always a pull between enterprises and allowing open sources to come in. They want to develop all their own things in-house, or they want to buy some very expensive solution, and then that becomes a problem. So to just put a cap on it, that culture needs to be embedded. We need to change the way we think about application development, even application management. All that skill set needs to be in-house in the planning phase before you even attempt to start to make, to move your applications to the cloud. Thank you.
I know that most companies need to change their culture development. It's an amazing information. Most companies have to take this point. From management point of view, what product solution can cloud orchestration offer, and which solution on the market in particular, Mr. Oluwaseun?
Yeah, so I think on this call, we'll probably have a lot of senior IT people, and maybe some of you are involved in day-to-day, but one thing that is critical, obviously, is having better visibility into your cloud infrastructure. And as has been stated all through the conference, people are moving to multi-cloud. You have different platforms, different geographical locations, different providers. And one of the things that really helps you have an overview to be able to manage and deploy across these platforms and feel that know that you have control is cloud orchestration. Cloud orchestration is simply programmatically managing the interactions between your workloads, your processes, and your environment. And usually deals with three main attributes. Like I mentioned, the service workload, the workload itself, and then the resources, to be able to define templates, standards, so that when you are creating workflows from user requests to actual deployment, there is a full view as to what is happening on the entire process. Some of the advantages that gives you, obviously, is around visibility. You have reduced human intervention because everything is sort of automated end to end. You have management across all the platforms, regardless of what it is. You might move from one in-house solution to another, as long as everything is within the orchestration tool. And then for companies that are big on standards and compliance, this is where it's most relevant, because nothing gets deployed without it going through an approval process, without a workflow, right? And then what that also helps is to standardize security, to make sure that applications meet the laid down standards. And then, of course, it also helps to manage costs. Now, for those who might still be wondering, okay, is cloud orchestration automation? It is not. Automation is a subset of cloud orchestration. But what I mean by cloud orchestration is, for example, let's say the marketing team wants to run a promo that is going to, double or 10x the traffic to the website on Friday by 12 noon. In a traditional sense, they'll probably have a meeting, they'll send an email to IT, or they'll raise a ticket. Then IT will assign an engineer to be on standby, and then on the time, scale out the resources. And when the people hit, and then after they are done, scale back in. But with orchestration, you can literally automate this workflow end to end. Depending on what the entry point is, it could be a ticketing system. Marketing person goes on, raises a ticket, that goes to your approval workflow, maybe through the head of the marketing. It goes to your CTO or CIO, whatever you have. Once it's approved, automatically the system can pick that approval and look at the time, the parameters, scale up the services as required, And then according to the time scale that has been given, when it is done and you notice that certain thresholds have been met, it will scale back down. This is the dream of all IT managers, right? You don't want to be called or having to stay awake at 2 a.m. to try and watch if everything is going right, if you have to scale down so that you can manage your cost. So that's how I think cloud orchestration can help. And there are a lot of popular ones. To give you a couple of examples, depending on the platform you use, AWS has cloud formation. I believe IBM too has a cloud orchestrator. There is Microsoft Azure automation. I think even Cisco has something called, I think, Cloud Center that they bought. I think it used to be Clicker. I can't remember the name now. Then there's OpenStack heat orchestration. So basically, in choosing an orchestrator, you probably look at your existing contracts, your existing vendors, look at what they have vis-a-vis what's available in the market, and then take your decision from there. Yeah, thank you.
I want another question on cloud, but before going to you, just I want to find Mr. Kamran. Have some constraints to go. We'll catch him later if you can. Thank you, Mr. Kamran.
Thanks, Kamran.
Thank you, Kamran.
In keeping up with the latest technology advancement, Mr. Oluwaseun, when is it okay to utilize container orchestrator in managing challenge with modern application and data integration?
As technology leaders, sometimes there's a huge demand on us to sort of keep up, with technology standards. So it's easy to get dragged in. Somebody is suggesting, oh, use the blockchain for this, or use the Internet of Things, or use AI or machine learning or whatnot. And of course, a couple of years ago, the buzzwords was around containerizations. Particularly, I think Kubernetes was the most popular one. And everybody thought, oh, you know what? Kubernetes solves all problems. Yeah, it does solve a lot of problems, but it brings its own headache as well. So as a general rule of thumb, what I say is, if you're going to be dealing with multiple containers and you require automations to start and stop these services, and you have a heavy microservices architecture infrastructure, by all means, go for container orchestration. If you don't, please stay away. It's not the best use of money for you. Just deploy your applications with automation or templates as you would normally, and manage your infrastructure from there. So yeah, once you have highly microservices environment, you have a lot of containers that you need to manage, and you need to be able to automate, then definitely go for container orchestration.
Thanks a lot. So if you understand, modernizing your application need a lot of skills in cloud, in orchestration, in container orchestration, and in data integration, with a clear step to follow when migrating your legacy, if you have a legacy, and it's very interesting. Thanks a lot, Bridget. We leave the floor for you. Thanks for inviting us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Malick. Thank you, Bridget.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much, dear panelists, Mr. Kamran Ahmed, Mr. Morafa, and our dear panel moderator, Mr. Malick DIOP, for an extremely interactive and insightful panel discussion. It is indeed great to hear about hybrid cloud management, overcoming app modernization and data integration challenges. Thanks once again, and continue to have a lovely day ahead, all of you.